Hey everyone, it's Tony with Hidden Light Photography, and today I'm going to show you how to hook up your Skywatcher EQ6R Pro to EQmod and Nina. Now before you get started, there's a couple of different ways you can hook this up. The first way, which is my preferred way, is going to be USB to serial, and I'm going to put a link to this cable on Amazon on the comment section. Not a bad cable, it's I think 36 bucks off of Amazon. It has been very reliable. I highly recommend this connection method. The other connection method is just a USB-C cable. If you do this, I highly recommend a quality cable. This, I believe, is the Apertura cable off of High Point Scientific. So before you hook up any cables to your mount, let's get it set up, put it on your tripod. Do not hook up any cables yet. And I'm gonna bring you over to my computer and show you all of the drivers that you need and when to connect your cables and how to get it to hook up to Nina. So let's get started. So the first thing you wanna do is open up your favorite web browser and go to google.com. Now there is a prerequisite, as always, and that prerequisite is ASCOM. So if you don't already have ASCOM installed, please watch my video on how to install ASCOM. I'm going to put a link to that video in the description of this video, so please watch that. You're going to need ASCOM. If you already have ASCOM, let's move forward. Now I want to stress on this, if you before you put any cables to your mount, make sure to watch this video in its entirety, as cabling the mount without the proper drivers and software can cause irreparable damage to the mount. So you're going to want to make sure to have everything done properly before putting any cables to the mount. Now the first thing that you're going to need is EQ-ASCOM. So you're going to type in EQ-ASCOM in search. If you don't see it, just keep typing it until you see it. And you want SourceForge. And that'll bring you right here. And you want the latest and greatest. Now, just to back up for a second, if you click on any of these other links, you'll get a screen that looks like this, and you can read about EQ-ASCOM. Or what you want to do is click Downloads. The latest public release of EQmod software can be found on SourceForge, and you'll get a screen like this. EQ-ASCOM is the one that you want, and that'll bring you back here. And again, latest and greatest, in this case 5/12 of 21. Now I already have these downloaded, so I'm not going to redo them, but you'll click over here on the software. And depending on your system, in the top right, you'll get a downloads box and you'll watch it download. And when it's done, click Open File. And it may or may not ask you if you want to allow the app to make changes to your device. If that happens, just click Yes. Follow the install wizard and you'll have EQ-ASCOM on your computer. Now the next thing that you need is going to be a prolific driver. And that allows your mount to communicate with your computer, because it opens up a virtual COM port. Now you're going to go back to google.com, type in Skywatcher prolific driver, and if you don't see it pop up right away, just continue typing until you see it. Skywatcher.com, prolific USB to serial. Windows driver, prolific USB to serial device driver. Now again, click Download. You'll see your downloads box pop up. Once it's done downloading, click Open File. Allow it to make changes to your computer. If it asks, follow the install wizard, and then you have the prolific driver on your computer. Now, if you're using the USB-C connection method, that's all that you're going to need. If you're using my preferred connection method, which is the USB to serial cable, there is one more driver that you need. It's an FTDI chipped cable, so it does require a driver. Now, I want to make sure that everyone understands, depending on the cable that you're using, you're going to want to use their recommended driver. In this case, again, I'm going to post a link to the cable that I'm using. It's off of Amazon. It's actually the cable that Skywatcher recommended. But again, things change. Always double check which driver that these things need. As of right now, the driver is located on FTDIchip.com. So that's where we're going to go. FTDIchip.com/drivers. You want the D2XX drivers, and click here to download the Windows 7 to Windows 11. And this is going to give you your virtual COM port driver and your D2XX drivers. This is so this cable can communicate. So make sure you download EQASCOM, the prolific driver, and this driver if you're using this cable. Now again, you're going to click here. It'll bring up your downloads box. Once it's done downloading, click Open File, allow it to make changes if it asks, follow the install wizard, and you're ready to go. Now the next thing that you're going to do is cable up your mount. And when you look at the mount head, the face plate, you're going to see a few different ports. The port at the upper left is going to be the power port, where you're going to plug in the power supply cable for the mount. Down to the right and bottom of that, you're going to see two black ports. The first one at the top is going to be an auto guider port. Right below that is the hand controller port. And if you have the newer version of the EQ6R Pro, you're going to see a USB-C port. Now, if you look through the accessories that came with the mount, you're going to see a little gray clip, and it's got some double-sided foam tape on it. Go ahead and install that. That will hold your cables in place as your mount slews during the night. I have mine installed underneath the Skywatcher EQ6R Pro wording, which is right next to the power switch. I have it right below that, and then I route my cables through the clip. Now, if you're using the USB-C cable, you're going to plug into the USB-C port at the bottom of the two black ports, the auto guider and hand controller port. Right below that, you'll see the USB-C port. If you're using a USB-C to serial cable like I'm using, you're going to take the serial cable end and plug it into the lower black port, which is labeled hand control. You want to make sure that that goes into the hand control port. So you're going to plug that in. And whichever method you're using, plug the other end of the cable into your computer. And then what you're going to do is power on your mount. You're going to go to Device Manager. And if you don't see it pop up right away, just continue typing. You'll see Device Manager pop up. And you'll see ports, COM and LPT. Now, one thing I want to notice is, in my case, it's COM 5. Yours may or may not be different. In my case, it will always connect to COM 5. Yours may or may not. It may switch COM ports, and that's okay. This is part of your routine. You always want to go and check your device manager and see which COM port that connects to. Every single time. Even though mine is not switched, I still go in and double check. I still double click on here and bring this up every single time. And that's going to come together here in a minute. Once you double click on that, you're going to get a window like this. You're going to go to Port Settings, Data Bits 8, Parity none, Stop Bits 1, Flow Control none. Make sure these are set up like this. Now your baud, or bits per second, this is important. This is how data moves through the cabling, and this also depends on your connection method. Now the USB-C, without getting too technical, the USB-C port communicates with the board a different way than the serial port for the hand controller, and these need to match. So if you're using the USB to serial cable like I'm using, your bits per second needs to be 9600. If you're using the USB-C connection method, 115/200 is what you want. Always double check, make sure that this is correct every single time. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come out of this, and we want to go to ASCOM device hub, and from here we're going to go to tools, setup, choose, and you want EQmod ASCOM HEQ 5.6. You'll see multiple in here, you may or may not, but the one that you want is EQmod ASCOM HEQ 5.6. And then you're gonna go to properties. And here's your settings for EQmod. Make sure you put in your site location, pointing ASCOM. I have mine on J2000. If you're using Nina, which is what we're going to get into next, J2000 is what it's looking for. Guiding, ASCOM pulse guiding. Make sure you have that on there. The rest of this can stay default. Now, let's go to EQmod port details. Timeout, you want it 2000, retry 2. Now let's get into this. This is why it's important. Check your device manager every single time, because it can change. And if it does, and it doesn't match here, it's never going to connect. Baud, again, 9600 if you're using USB to serial cable. 115/200 if you're using USB-C. Make sure your port matches. In my case, it's 5. If yours is different, make sure that you have the correct COM port. If it changes when you connect, make sure you choose the correct COM port. And we'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. Hit OK. And now it's connect. Here's EQmod. Here's all of your different settings. We'll get into this in a minute. Once you have this initially set up, you won't have to go into ASCOM device hub again, but you want to make sure that it initially gets set up correctly. Now, from here, you can slew. Now notice you're not hearing anything. That's because it's very, very slow. This is on your tracking rate. Let's bump it up a little bit. And there you go. I'm gonna go ahead and park that. Never just close out of EQmod. Disconnect it from whichever program summoned it. And you'll see that it automatically goes away. Okay, now that we have that done, now I was mentioning you don't need to go into ASCOM hub once you have the initial setup done. Once you bring up Nina, equipment, telescope. Now here's where you can choose your different drivers, okay? You'll see, again, a bunch in here that looks similar to the ASCOM hub. You want EQmod ASCOM HEQ 56, and you can go into your settings here now, and this box should look familiar. And just make sure that everything matches. Make sure that your baud is where it should be, your port is where it should be. It's matching device hub or device manager when you first hook everything up, and you do that check. You want to make sure this always matches. Once you confirm that, you can then connect to Nina. Now, EQmod comes with a few quirks. Let's go through some of those. Click on this little box right here. Make sure all of this, this should have matched when you checked in your settings before connecting. But now, here's some quirks. Sometimes this changes. This is your guide rate. I set mine to 50. So make sure you have that set. Make sure that you don't just change this. In PhD 2, if you change this, you have to run a new profile wizard. So I would set this to 50, run your profile wizard. We'll go through that in another video, but always make sure this is the same. Mount limits. This has caused me some headaches. A lot of people will actually, just like I do, disable mount limits. Once you get to meridian, if you're tracking a little bit past meridian, it's just going to stop and just sit there and not do anything ever again. Especially if you do happen to get it to flip meridian and it's within or at the limit and you're trying to plate solve to recenter, it won't. I would just disable the limits. It's risky. You need to make sure that you do not crash into the tripod, so you're going to need to have meridian flip set up. I'll go through that in another video. Another quirk that comes with EQmod is sometimes my encoders got weird, and when I would just my first slew of the night's always going to be for polar alignment. It would go to some random place. I have no idea what it was thinking. But what I would do is you want to make sure it's in the home position. Reset your encoders. Reset your park positions. Otherwise, it can end up in a weird spot when it parks, or go to a weird spot when you first slew. But that's about it for this page right here. From there, you can minimize that. And Nina now has full control of the EQ6R Pro. Now, one thing I do want to bring up, and when we go through setting up sequence and everything, we'll touch on this again. Before you slew anywhere and you reset your encoders, you reset your park positions, and then you minimize EQmod, click set as park. As long as it's at its home position, click set as park. Without doing that, it can go to some weird areas when it parks, and you want to make sure that it's predictable. I mean, from here, Nina has full control over it. You can go to a target. You can pretty much get started from there. So I hope you found that helpful. And if I didn't explain something thoroughly enough, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Comment, send me an email, hiddenlightinquiries@gmail.com. I don't get offended by questions. If I didn't go into enough detail and you ask for more detail, I don't get offended over that. I want everyone to learn. I want everyone to have a good time with this. The next video, we're going to be going over how to connect this to Green Swamp Server if you choose to use Green Swamp Server. Again, in my previous video, I mentioned that I had issues with EQmod. It was just some random connection issues. My laptop didn't like EQmod all that much, so Great program. Do not let that deter you from using it. Some people have issues with EQmod and go to Green Swamp Server. Some people have issues with Green Swamp Server and go to EQmod. Try it out, see if it works for you. If so, amazing. Keep using it. It's a great piece of software. But again, any questions, please let me know. Until the next video, clear skies.